3.9 million words later, and I'm finally ready to present to you my Cosmere Save the Best for Last reading order. And if you like fantasy deep dives like this, then make sure you like and subscribe, and let's get into it. There are plenty of ways to enter the Cosmere, and honestly, there are truly no wrong ways of entering this magnificent universe, but if you follow this order, you're going to save all of the best surprises, crossovers, and emotional payoff moments for the very end of your reading order. So without further ado, I think you should start with the first Mistborn trilogy and just go through all three of those, and that is The Final Empire, Well of Ascension, and The Hero of Ages. Next, read the 11th Metal. You're going to learn a lot about the world of Scadrial and a little bit more about Mistborn as a whole. If you have not yet picked up the Arcanum Unbounded, I highly recommend it because we're going to be referencing this a lot in this video. Now we're going to jump into Elantris. This is the most underrated book in the entire Cosmere. This is also the very first published work in the Cosmere. This eventually is going to be a full series, but I think this is a perfect place to read this because you can see a lot of the seeds that were sown for Stormlight here, especially in the similarities between the characters. So I think this is perfect to read at number 5 in the reading order. Then for numbers 6 and 7 in the reading order, you're going to go back to the Arcanum Unbound. You're going to read The Hope of Elantris. This is a little bit more of a backstory onto things that may have happened off page in Elantris, and then you're going to go into The Emperor's Soul. I think this is one of the best entire short stories that I have ever read. I would read an entire trilogy based on this magic system, and I hope we get that one day. But for now, this is going to come in at number 6 and 7 in the reading order. Now we're going to get into Mistborn Era 2. This is my favorite of the Mistborn eras, and I know that's an unpopular opinion, but I think I enjoy the more adult tones and themes in this series a little bit more. So first, you're going to start out with The Alloy of Law. This was originally planned as a standalone, so it works quite well as a bit more of a fast-paced book to get you back into the Cosmere after taking a little bit of a break with some lesser books, if you would. Then you're going to do a little bit of a break into the Arcanum Unbound, and you're going to read Allomancer Jack and the Pits of Altania. This is light and funny, but honestly, it's completely skippable. It has almost no impact on the rest of the series, and I just didn't really enjoy it. So you can read it if you want the full experience, or you can skip it. Now we're going to go back into Mistborn Era 2, but we're not going to finish Mistborn Era 2. We're going to do books 2 and 3. That's going to be Shadows of Self, and then you're going to do Bands of Mourning. I think these get really good as you go. Shadows of Self is a bit of a reset on the universe as Sanderson decided to start writing a series with this book, and then Bands of Mourning is definitely one of the best books in the entire Cosmere. Now we're pausing Mistborn Era 2, and we're going to go into the Arcanum Unbound again, and we're going to read Mistborn Secret History. This is definitely one of the better short stories in the entire Cosmere, but you cannot read this any earlier than this point because there will be some major spoilers for the rest of the Cosmere and, of course, the rest of the Mistborn series. I do really like this, but we are going to be taking quite a long break from Mistborn Era 2, so just keep that in mind. The 13th book you're going to want to read in this series is going to be Warbreaker. This is the standalone series that follows a really cool chromatic breath magic system that is very similar to Will of the Many. If you're a fan of that series, this one did come first, however. I didn't really love this one, but I think it's because I read this after reading Way of Kings, so I highly recommend you read this before getting into the Stormlight Archives, and if you want to read this later, you can, but this has to be read before you start Words of Radiance. Just trust me on that. Then you can read White Sands. There is a short, more prose-heavy version in the Arcanum Unbounded that is admittedly what I read because the graphic novels can be very expensive and hard to get your hands on. There will eventually be a prose-only version of White Sands. This is a cool connection, but it's not super necessary right now, but I think this is a good place to read it. Now you're ready for the big leagues. It's time to start the Stormlight Archives. This is the cornerstone to the entire Cosmere, and this is without a doubt the best work that Brandon Sanderson has ever put out. So we're going to get started with The Way of Kings, Book 1. We're going to let Stormlight marinate for a little bit. We're going to go back to our favorite friend, that is the Arcanum Unbound, and we're going to read Shadows for Silence in the Forests of Hell. This is a much darker tone than a lot of the other Sanderson works, and I really appreciate it. Now we're flipping the script again on the tone. We're going to go light. We're going to go romantasy. We're going to go one of the best books in the entire Cosmere, and that is Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. I did not think the words romantasy and Brandon Sanderson belonged together, but boy was I surprised because this is a banger. I give this a 4.5 stars out of 5. At number 18, we're going to be reading Words of Radiance. This is one of the best books in fantasy, period, especially that last 600 pages where things really kick into gear. Then we're going to read the novella that focuses on Lift. This is a very silly character, so this is, of course, a bit lighter in tone, but I really appreciate this novella because it sets up some really cool character backstory and payoffs in the later books. You absolutely have to read these between Words of Radiance and the next book, Oathbringer, which, of course, brings us to my personal favorite novel in the entire Cosmere, and I think the best book that Sanderson Sanderson has ever written and may ever write, and that is, of course, Oathbringer. I love this book. It's got the best first 200 pages and last 200 pages. I can completely understand why people don't love the middle, but I think this is a perfect time to read this book. Then we're going to read Dawnshard. This is a quick but efficient novella that bridges some of the gaps between these Stormlight events, and it follows the Lopen. This is a solid place to read this. At number 2, we have Tress of the Emerald Sea. This is my favorite of the standalones. It's really tight between this and Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, but this is a lot lighter in the tone. It's very much like The Princess Bride. You can read this a lot earlier on, but I think it's a mistake if you start the Cosmere with this, because this one has a lot of the best Easter eggs, crossovers, and references to the other books, so I think it's meant to be read at a later point, which is why this is in at number 22. At number 23, we have the 4th Stormlight Archive book, and that is Rhythm of War. This has the best individual moments in the entire Stormlight Archive, but the pace can drag just a little bit, but I think this is a perfect time to read this book. Now it's time to finish Mistborn Era 2. We're jumping back into the Lost Metal, and yes, this is quite a lengthy break and thousands of pages between finishing the 3rd book in Mistborn Era 2, but that's what I did, and I really appreciated it. It's not that difficult to jump back into the series, but maybe you want to look back at some notes you may have taken. However, this is one of the most emotionally impactful books in the entire Cosmere, and I absolutely love it. This is my favorite Mistborn Era 2 book. Now we hit the debate between numbers 25 and numbers 26. Some people think you should read The Sunlit Man first. Some people think you should read Wind and Truth first. I am on the latter of that spectrum. I think if you read Sunlit Man first, you are going to get major events spoiled for you in Wind and Truth. However, I'm not a big fan of Sunlit Man because it just kind of wastes the potential of a specific character that I will not name for no spoiler reasons, of course, but I think the proper order to read this is Wind and Truth and then The Sunlit Man. Finally, we're going to read the recently published Isles of the Emberdark, and from then on, you can just go ahead and read publication order, especially as we get into more of the sci-fi elements of the Cosmere. I think these next books being published are definitely meant to be read after Wind and Truth as we bridge the gap into the next arc of the Stormlight Archives. I was somewhat disappointed by this book. It just felt like it was written for children, to be completely honest with you, but this is a good stopping point if you want to take a break in the Cosmere. The Cosmere is an incredible journey, especially for newer fans of fantasy that have not read really big, expansive series like this. You can take breaks as many times as you want. Sanderson is an awesome and approachable writer, especially if you take months between Stormlight books like I did. But if you follow this order, I think you're going to have the best absolute experience and the best aha and surprise moments. So, if you like book breakdowns like this and reading orders just like the one we presented, then make sure you like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.